Hello, this is Vladimir Timoshenko with you, and we're starting right away with the main topic. Pokrovsk and Kupiansk remain the hottest spots on the map of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Right now, battles are raging in the industrial zone of Pokrovsk itself. What is happening on these sections of the front right now? More in our report. About
the fact that Russia is reducing pressure on Ukrainian armed forces positions in Pokrovsk is being reported by the Institute for the Study of War. According to analysts, the pace of the Russian offensive has slowed due to massive losses. And now those who have managed to survive the local assaults are waiting for reinforcements and hoping to restore logistics.
The Russians have reduced their activity in the city and decreased the number of movements. In this way, the Russian armed forces are trying to minimize their losses and are waiting for reinforcements from their main forces. This is confirmed by attempts of Russian forces to establish logistics through the southern outskirts of Pokrovsk. In particular, in this area, the Russians tried several times to transfer personnel using vehicles and motorcycles. The defense forces did not allow this to happen.
At the same time, the occupiers' main objective for today is to cut off Ukrainian logistics. The command notes that they have not succeeded in doing this. This is primarily due to the timely deployment of special units from the GUR, SBU, and SSO.
In tactical terms, there are indeed two objectives we can highlight here, tactical and strategic. Tactically, it is to recapture positions north of the city of Pokrovsk itself, and from Pokrovsk to take enemy positions and to impact logistics, which in many ways are indeed under the fire control of the Russian occupiers. However, this is not physical control, and today it was possible to create some alternative, albeit small, logistical corridors through which it is still possible to supply the troops.
Meanwhile, the East grouping of the Ukrainian armed forces reported yesterday that the defense forces have achieved partial success in the city. Assault units are clearing the city house by house and pushing the enemy back to the outskirts. As the military says, it is simply impossible to clearly define the positions of the sides in Pokrovsk today. After all, the entire settlement has effectively turned into a gray zone.
Our defense forces, also operating in small groups, are steadily and persistently pushing the Russians out, or at the very least, it is clear that they fully intend to push the Russians out of the industrial zone and from the northern and central parts of Pokrovsk. Well, at this point, it's quite difficult to say exactly how things will develop from here.
Meanwhile, Russia is trying to advance beyond the settlement, attempting to encircle it. From the north, however, the enemy suffers huge losses every day, essentially achieving no results. On the contrary, units, particularly Azov, that managed to eliminate the Russian breakthrough toward Dobropilya are moving ever closer directly to Pokrovsk. And this guarantees that the city will not be encircled, at least from the north.
By and large, the completion of this counter-offensive operation is smoothly transitioning and will most likely transition into the elimination of this northern snot of the Russians, which is aimed at encircling Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad. Therefore, on the one hand, the enemy's plan is clear. The intention of our command is also abundantly clear and is aimed at deblockading the Pokrovsk grouping.
Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky also commented on the situation. According to him, Pokrovsk is now a continuous fortified area. There are several places where the Russians managed to get through the engineering barriers, but the Ukrainian armed forces know exactly where these places are. Therefore, the situation as a whole is under control. At the same time, Syrsky added that the command already has plans B and V for all possible developments. Meanwhile, the Russian group has identified the Kharkiv region, specifically the city of Kupiansk, as the second most important pressure point for itself. Another statement by the Russian Federation about encircling Ukrainian troops there was refuted by Viktor Trehubov, head of the press service of the joint forces. In turn, military analysts note that the enemy is trying to use the Pokrovsk tactic here. However, its results are much more modest.
In the Kupiansk direction, in Kupiansk itself, the situation is significantly different. It seems that our command and our defenders have managed to bring the situation under control. And the enemy's actions in the city turned out to be less effective than the Russian command had hoped.
Another important reason for the pressure on Kupiansk, experts say, is to prevent Ukraine from transferring reserves to Pokrovsk. As is known, Putin gave his army until Friday to temporarily capture the city, and now the Russian command has concentrated half of its entire grouping in Ukraine right here.
Putin has set a strategic objective to capture the Pokrovsk agglomeration. He has not managed to advance on all sectors. He assumed that this would be an advance through Sumy region, Kharkiv region, at the 3 points we mentioned, in the area, for example, of Kupiansk and further on. Then Luhansk, Lyman, and from different directions to launch offensive operations. Of course, he believed the breakthrough would be in the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia regions, but there were not enough forces and resources.
And analysts add that there probably still won't be enough. According to information from our Center for Countering Disinformation, Russian army losses in the battle for Pokrovsk exceed both the number of new contract soldiers and mercenaries from other countries. And
Now another extremely important topic. Ukraine does not leave the barbaric shelling of its energy infrastructure unanswered. For every strike on our facilities, there are equally painful strikes on the energy sector of the aggressor country. Russians need to get used to living without electricity, without heat, because retaliatory attacks will only intensify. And while Ukrainians have already adapted to blackouts over the past 3 winters, for Putin's subjects, this is something new. And after all, winters in Russia are long and cold. Here are the details. On the
night of November 9th, the Ukrainian armed forces struck the Voronezh thermal power plant. After the strike, electricity disappeared in several homes and then came back. The Voronezh thermal power plant is one of the largest suppliers of heat energy in the region and provides it to 4 districts of the city.
Right before my eyes, I had just stepped out onto the balcony. Right over there, just to be continued. Apparently it was through the power lines, basically. No, well, I heard 3, but they're saying 4. In
Belgorod, this incident was attacked, leaving tens of thousands of residents without electricity. The governor of the region, Vyacheslav Gladkov, stated that the damage is very serious.
As a result of yesterday evening's rocket attack, there is serious damage to the power and heating supply systems of the city of Belgorod. Our energy workers, as always, are heroically trying to cope with the task at hand. Right now, they are working to restore what was damaged by our enemies.
The day before, Ukrainian drones struck energy facilities in Saratov, Engels, and the Volgograd region. Power outages were also recorded there. Russia is attempting to plunge Ukraine into a blackout with massive drone and missile attacks. In turn, the Ukrainian army is launching symmetrical strikes against Russia's energy sector. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the authorities are ready and will not only defend the infrastructure but also strike back in response.
what will happen with electricity? Today it's hard for me to say. We will be ready for any retaliatory challenges. We work on this every day. We will defend, we will fight. The Russians must know that step by step we will increase the production of everything so that they too feel what we feel. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine. In
2025, Russia is experiencing a trend of increasing electricity shortages. As of October this year, the shortage of capacity in the power grid reaches tens of gigawatts. This was reported by the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service.
Due to the demand from industrial, residential, and municipal consumers exceeding the total generation of all power plants, as of October this year, the shortage of capacity in the power grid has already reached 25 gigawatts. Despite the attempts by the REF government to introduce at least some measures to stabilize its energy system, such as monetary compensation or discounts on electricity bills for voluntarily reducing consumption during peak hours, as well as disconnecting consumers who do not require guaranteed power supply, the growing electricity deficit indicates a systemic crisis in the Russian energy sector. The Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine.
In addition to wear and overload, systematic strikes by the AFU are also affecting the Russian energy system. If Ukrainian strikes even partially damage Russian thermal power plants, this will cause significant problems for Russia's energy sector. The AFU have already brought a blackout in southern Russia 60% closer.
Strikes by the AFU are gradually knocking out high-voltage substations, which make it possible to transfer electricity from one region to another. If thermal power plants are also destroyed, their situation will become significantly more difficult than ours. Alexander Karchenko, director of the Energy Research Center. From
Not only Russian regions but also Moscow are suffering from Ukrainian drone attacks and the lack of electricity.
This has a very serious, not just propagandistic impact directly on the Kremlin. Let me remind you that one of the reasons for launching the so-called special military operation was the issue of guaranteeing the security of the Russian Federation itself. At least that's how Putin and his inner circle explained it. We can see how the war is coming directly to Moscow. And not just to Muscovites. We see that the geography of Ukraine's drone attacks is expanding.
Ukrainians have long since gotten used to and adapted to power and heating outages. But for Russians, this is an unexpected surprise. So it's time to start stocking up on matches, candles, and firewood.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.